Today's program is brought to you by OTCStockShark.com. For the latest and greatest OTC and Pink Sheets information, sign up for your account at OTCStockShark.com. Thank you for tuning in to TBC Today. I'm Brandon Vincent.
And I'm Angelina Soriano.
In financial news, U.S. stocks sank as fears of recession jumped back into the foreground on a weaker jobs picture. The Dow Jones Industrial Average ended down 144 points, or 1.4%, to 10,271, snapping a two-day winning streak. Most of the major benchmark indexes are now in the red for the week, month, and year. An unexpected surge in jobless claims startled investors, reigniting fears of persistent unemployment and eclipsing excitement over Intel's bid to acquire McAfee at a 60% premium. The latest jobs report, as well as a report from the Philadelphia Fed, confirms that we're only halfway through a secular bear market right now. Doug Roberts, chief investment strategist at Channel Capital Research, predicted joblessness would continue for some time as companies outsource work and invest in technology that will ultimately end the need for many workers. The danger, Mr. Roberts adds, is that we're at 10% unemployment with plenty of capacity out there. In U.S. news, Archbishop Timothy Dolan, the leader of the Roman Catholic Church in New York, said that he would gladly help mediate between the proponents and the critics of an Islamic center and mosque planned for a site 2 blocks from Ground Zero. The Archbishop said that it was his major prayer that a compromise could be reached, and that while he had no strong feelings about the project, he might support finding a new location for the center. Speaking during an impromptu news conference at the Covenant House, a Catholic shelter in Manhattan for homeless youth, Archbishop Dolan invoked the example of Pope John Paul II, who in 1993 ordered Catholic nuns to move from their covenant at the former Auschwitz death camp after protest from Jewish leaders. Dolan stated, "He's the one who said, let's keep the idea and maybe move the address. It worked there, and it might work here." Archbishop Dolan is the most prominent New York religious leader to weigh in on the Islamic Center, which has spurred a fierce national debate over freedom of religion and the legacy of 9/11 that has even drawn in President Obama. In international news, Staff Sergeant Lucas Trammell, a tank gunner with the 3rd Infantry Division, fought his way into Baghdad in 2003. He was back in 2005 abandoning the tank for foot patrols in a very unsafe city, and again in 2007 as a bodyguard for a battalion commander in Baghdad. He has killed the enemy and lost friends, and he has sought treatment for PTSD. He's back in Iraq for the 4th time, part of a force of only 50,000 troops no longer engaged in combat as of August 31st. He is one of thousands of soldiers and officers for whom the legacy of Iraq, like Afghanistan, has been a recalibration of what it means to be an American at war today. The 3rd Infantry Division has spent more than 4 years in all in a war that has lasted 7.5. These soldiers, far more than any other Americans, bear the personal and professional burdens of a conflict that has lost some popular support it had at home. To those fighting it, the war in Iraq is not a glorious cause, but as the old advertisement put it, an adventure.
Hi, I'm Chef Tony, and now there's a knife so sharp you can cut a pineapple in midair. It's the Miracle Blade 3 Perfection Series. This is my all-purpose slicer, the ultimate in slicing knives. You'll also get Rock and Chop, ripped through ribs. Plus, you'll receive my fillet and boning knife, fillet fish right down to the skin. And my Chop and Scoop, chop parsley and fresh herbs in seconds. Watch, flex, and scoop right to your favorite recipe. And you get my paring knife, curved to peel fruits and veggies. I'll also send you 4 steak knives. Call now and you'll get my Perfection shears and a second Miracle Blade slicer absolutely free.
But wait, we'll send you a second complete set of knives free. Just imagine, that's now nearly $500 worth of knives for just one payment of only $39.95. And if you don't think the Miracle Blades are the best knives you've ever used, just return them for a full refund. So call now.
In entertainment news, Kat Von D's fingers apparently spoke too soon. After tweeting, "Yes, Jesse and I are dating," the LA Ink star took down the message, though it was quickly spread and retweeted by more than 100 people. Her representative has said that she and the motorcycle mogul are just friends and that their cozy night out in Vegas over the weekend wasn't the start of a new relationship. But a source tells People that their friendship could possibly turn into something more. Jesse and Kat drove to Las Vegas together in Jesse's car. It was just the two of them, and they slept in the same room. They have been friends for years, but this is the first time that they are both single. James' ex, Sandra Bullock, tells People in its current issue that the two have moved on with their lives and only want the best for each other. In tech news, 1960, Belka and Strelka, a couple of stray mutts used in the Soviet space program, became the first living creatures to return alive from an orbital flight. The Soviets had been using dogs for experimental high-altitude flights long before Belka and Strelka lifted off from the Baikonur on what would be a 16-orbit flight. Their safe return was in no means a certainty. Less than a month earlier, 2 dogs were lost when the booster rocket meant to carry their spacecraft into orbit exploded on launch. Then there was Laika, of course, the first living being to orbit the Earth, but Laika was sent into space on a one-way ticket. The Soviets knew beforehand that she wasn't coming back. It was the Americans, not the Soviets, who put the first animals into rocket-powered missiles to test the effects of rapid acceleration and weightlessness on the living organism. Albert, a monkey, was the first to go, launched into suborbital space on June 11, 1948, aboard a V-2 Blossom rocket. He did not survive. The Soviets began experimenting with rabbits, mice, and rats before switching to dogs in the early 50s. In general, the Soviets were successful at bringing their dogs home safely, and several of them made multiple flights. One lucky pooch, Snowflake, made a total of 6 flights during 1959 and 1960. In selecting their animals, the Soviets preferred females and strays. The dogs went through rigorous training to get them ready to fly. Because the dog would be immobile throughout the flight, she was confined in a gradually smaller box for days on end and trained to sit still for long periods of time. The animals grew accustomed to wearing a spacesuit and was placed in flight simulators and centrifuges that prepared her for flight. In travel news, a Southwest flight attendant is in the news for taking a baby from her parents after the mother allegedly slapped the 13-month-old child for crying on a Dallas to Albuquerque flight. CNN picks up the story, writing, "The attendant told the police she saw the woman strike the child with an open hand in the face in an attempt to get the child to stop crying. The flight attendant also said she saw the mother slapping the child on her legs." New York's Daily News writes, Southwest spokeswoman Whitney Eckinger confirmed that an incident had taken place on the flight, but denied that the attendant had taken custody of the child. Eckinger said, "What you read about the flight attendant taking the baby is not the case. She did it as a 'would you like me to bounce your baby for you' gesture. Our attendants do that from time to time, just to soothe the crying babies because the attendants are used to walking up and down the aisles." In its report, ABC News says, when the plane landed in Albuquerque, the family was met by police. A Southwest Airlines spokeswoman told ABC News the local authorities were called out of precaution for the child. Authorities eventually allowed the family to board a connecting flight, whether it was an intervention or a simple gesture of help. Police said, "I think it was a solid move on the part of the flight attendant to take custody of the child. It neutralized the situation and it calmed everyone down." In green news, when we heard about drying clothes indoors, we were surprised to hear that some folks had considered opening the windows and cranking up the heat on their thermostat as a green method of clothes drying. But they're not the only ones doing weird things out of season. A local Olive Garden in Colonial Heights, Virginia is running its fireplace even though it's 100 degrees outside. We'd love to know if this is going on elsewhere. Of course, it goes without saying that an open fireplace is not much of a heating device. At the best of times, you need a wood stove or even a pellet stove if you want any real heat. In a restaurant setting, it's almost certainly more about aesthetics and atmosphere than it is about any kind of warmth. Nevertheless, who would want to even look at a fire when it's 100 degrees outside? Just like the idea of leaving your doors open and your AC running is good for business, but an increasingly energy-conscious public will be more turned off than attracted by such waste. Thank you for tuning in to TBC Today. I'm Brandon Vincent.
And I'm Angelina Soriano.
The makeup in today's program is provided by MAC Cosmetics.